My name is Rebecca Miller, and I'm 34 years old. The day my father abandoned my 8-year-old daughter Lily at Newark Liberty International Airport changed our lives forever. As a single mother and ER nurse, I occasionally relied on my dad Walter for childcare, despite his harsh, tough love approach that contrasted with my nurturing style. I never imagined he would leave my little girl alone in one of the busiest airports in America, all because he believed she needed to learn a lesson. Before I tell you how my own father abandoned my daughter at an international airport, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe for more true family stories that might help others heal from similar experiences. Growing up with Walter Miller as a father meant living with constant anxiety. My dad was a retired Army sergeant who approached parenting like he was still commanding troops. Every infraction had consequences, every mistake became a teaching moment, and every sign of weakness warranted toughening up. My mother Diane tried to soften his edges, but her gentle nature was no match for his domineering personality. "The world is harsh," he'd say whenever my mother suggested his punishments were too severe. "Better they learn it from me than get blindsided later." My childhood home operated on military precision. Beds were to be made with hospital corners. Rooms were subject to inspection. Chores had to be completed by designated times. The consequences for failing these standards were never just a talking to. They were designed to teach lessons. When I was 7, I forgot my lunch at home. Rather than bringing it to school, my father let me go hungry all day. "She'll remember tomorrow," he told my concerned mother. At 10, I missed curfew by 15 minutes, after losing track of time at a friend's house. My punishment was sleeping in the backyard tent for a weekend to appreciate having a roof over my head that came with rules. The worst incident happened when I was 13. After I'd saved up for months to buy concert tickets with friends, I earned a B- on a math test. My father tore the tickets up in front of me. "Millers don't celebrate mediocrity," he said as I sobbed. My mother died when I was 16, breast cancer took her quickly, and without her buffering presence, my father's parenting style became even more rigid. I moved out the day after high school graduation. College and nursing school gave me physical distance, but the emotional scars remained. I deliberately chose a helping profession where empathy was required. Every time I comforted a frightened patient, I healed a small piece of my younger self. When I met James in my mid-20s, I thought I'd found someone completely different from my father. He was creative, easygoing, and gentle. We married quickly, and I became pregnant with Lily just after turning 26. The moment they placed my daughter in my arms, I made a silent promise. She would never know the fear or emotional abandonment I had experienced. Her childhood would be secure, loving, and supportive. James and I divorced when Lily was 5. The passionate artist I'd fallen for revealed another side, unreliable, financially irresponsible, and eventually unfaithful. Though the marriage ended, James remained marginally involved in Lily's life, seeing her once or twice a month when his artistic pursuits allowed. My nursing career advanced to a full-time position in Newark's busiest emergency department. The hours were demanding, the work physically and emotionally draining, but it provided the stability Lily needed. My schedule often required creative childcare arrangements, after-school programs, occasional babysitters, and when those fell through, my father. Despite our complicated history, Walter seemed genuinely fond of Lily. He'd mellowed somewhat with age, though his fundamental belief in tough lessons remained intact. We'd had minor disagreements about his approach to Lily, his insistence she finish every bite on her plate, his refusal to help with homework, because she needs to figure it out herself, his dismissal of her tears as manipulation. "You're turning her soft, Rebecca," he'd criticize. "The world will eat her alive if you keep coddling her." I'd defend my parenting choices firmly but carefully. We needed his help, and part of me still desperately wanted his approval, a childhood habit I couldn't seem to break. Besides, he'd never done anything truly harmful with Lily, just irritatingly old school in his approach. That precarious balance worked until 3 months ago, when a massive pileup on the New Jersey Turnpike filled our ER with critical patients. Staffing was already thin due to a flu outbreak among personnel. My supervisor called, desperate for experienced trauma nurses to take extra shifts. That same week, my sister Katie in Chicago had invited Lily to visit for spring break. The timing seemed perfect. I could cover the emergency shifts while Lily enjoyed quality time with her aunt. The only complication, getting Lily to Chicago. I couldn't take her myself due to the hospital crisis. "Dad," I said during our weekly call, "I hate to ask, but could you possibly take Lily to the airport on Thursday? Maybe even fly with her to Chicago to drop her with Katie." There was a pause before he answered. "I suppose I could handle that." About time the girl flew anyway. Builds character. Relief washed over me. "Thank you so much. I'll pay for both tickets, of course." "No need," he said gruffly. "I can cover it. Consider it her birthday present." His unexpected generosity should have been my first warning sign, but instead, I felt a warm rush of gratitude. Perhaps he was finally softening in his retirement years. "You're sure you're comfortable with this?" I asked. "It's a big responsibility." "Rebecca," he said with that familiar edge of irritation, "I raised you, didn't I? I think I can handle getting one small child on an airplane." I chose to ignore the debatable quality of how he'd raised me and focused instead on solving my immediate problem. My father would get Lily safely to Chicago. I would fulfill my professional obligations, and everyone would benefit. How catastrophically wrong I was. The morning of their flight was chaotic but excited. Lily bounced around our apartment, her pink rolling suitcase packed and repacked several times to accommodate the precise collection of stuffed animals, books, and activities she deemed essential for her adventure. Aunt Katie said we can go to the aquarium and see the dolphins. Lily chattered, her blonde ponytail bobbing as she added yet another toy to her already overflowing backpack. "And maybe the dinosaur museum too." "That sounds amazing, sweetheart," I said, gently removing 3 of the 5 stuffed animals. "But remember, you need room for your important things too." I'd spent the previous evening preparing a special backpack for Lily with everything she might need, her favorite comfort items, a fully charged tablet with downloaded movies, healthy snacks, a change of clothes, and most importantly, a laminated card with all relevant contact information. "This stays in your front pocket at all times," I explained, showing her the card with my phone number, Katie's address and phone, and Walter's information. "If you get separated from Grandpa at any point, which won't happen, but just in case, you find an airport worker with a uniform and badge, and show them this card." Lily nodded solemnly, her blue eyes wide. "Like a secret agent with identification." "Exactly like that," I smiled, tucking the card securely into the zippered front pocket. When Walter arrived to pick them up, I went through my detailed instructions while he listened with thinning patience. "The boarding passes are in this folder. I've checked you both in already. Lily's seat is next to yours, by the window, because she wants to see the clouds. You'll need to stay with her at all times, Dad. Airport policy doesn't allow children under 12 to be unattended for any reason." "Rebecca," Walter interrupted, "I'm not senile yet. I know how to navigate an airport." "I know, Dad. I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly," I continued. "You need to stay until the plane is completely boarded and in the air. Sometimes there are delays or gate changes. For God's sake, Rebecca. People have been flying with children since commercial aviation began. You're overthinking this." Lily appeared then, struggling with her suitcase, momentarily diffusing the tension. Walter's expression softened slightly at the sight of his granddaughter. "Ready for your first flight, soldier?" he asked, using his nickname for her that I'd always disliked. "Yes, sir." Lily saluted playfully, something she'd started doing after Walter told her stories about his military days. I hated the militaristic overtones, but let it pass as their special connection. I knelt to give Lily a tight hug. "I'm going to miss you so much, baby. Be good for Aunt Katie, and I'll see you in 1 week." 1 week is 7 days, she informed me seriously. I marked it on my calendar. I was helping load their luggage into Walter's sedan when my phone rang, the hospital. A multi-victim trauma was arriving in 20 minutes, all hands needed immediately. My heart sank. "Dad, I have to go, emergency at work. Can you handle it from here?" Walter waved me off impatiently. "Go save lives. We'll be fine." My last image before rushing to my car was Walter and Lily walking hand in hand toward the apartment exit, her pink suitcase trailing behind them. If I'd known it would be the last moment of normalcy before our lives shattered, would I have done anything differently? Would I have sensed the catastrophe looming just hours ahead? The ER was chaos when I arrived, ambulances already unloading victims from a construction site collapse. I was immediately assigned to a critical patient with crush injuries, my mind and hands fully engaged in the life-saving protocols that were second nature after years in trauma care. Hours passed in the focused intensity of emergency medicine. It was only during a brief break, nearly 5 hours later, that I checked my phone and saw the missed calls, 3 from Katie, 2 from an unknown number, and nothing from my father. My stomach dropped. Lily's flight should have landed in Chicago over an hour ago. Katie would have been waiting at arrivals to pick her up. The first voicemail from Katie was casual. "Hey Becca, just checking to see if Walter and Lily's flight was delayed. The boards here show it arrived, but I don't see them at baggage claim yet." The second was concerned. "Rebecca, I've checked everywhere in the terminal. No sign of them. Walter isn't answering his phone. Please call me back ASAP." The third was panicked. "Rebecca. Where are they? The airline says they weren't on the flight. What's going on? Call me now." My hands shaking, I tried calling Walter's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. The unknown number turned out to be Newark Airport security. Their message was brief and professional, but the content froze my blood. "This message is for Rebecca Miller regarding a minor, Lily Miller, currently under airport supervision at Newark Liberty International Airport. Please contact us immediately at this number." As I was processing this information, my phone chimed with a new voicemail, from Walter. His voice was calm, almost smug. "Rebecca, I've left Lily at the departure gate. She was disrespectful and throwing a tantrum about the seating arrangement. You've raised her to be entitled and disrespectful. She'll learn a lesson about behavior. Pick her up at Newark." The room spun around me. I played the message again, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. My father had abandoned my 8-year-old daughter, alone, at an international airport, and flown back home without her. "I need to leave, family emergency," I stammered to my supervisor, already grabbing my coat. "My daughter, she's alone at the airport." I don't remember the drive back to Newark Airport. My mind cycled through images of Lily, terrified, crying, vulnerable to any stranger who approached her. How long had she been alone? Hours. Who was watching her now? What had my father done? The 20-minute drive to Newark Airport was the longest of my life. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, while my mind created increasingly terrifying scenarios of what might be happening to Lily. Every red light was an eternity. Every slow driver an obstacle between me and my abandoned child. The symptoms of my panic attack intensified as I drove: shallow breathing, tunnel vision, a crushing pressure on my chest. Stay conscious, I told myself aloud. Lily needs you conscious. I abandoned my car in the short-term parking, not bothering to check if I was between the lines, and ran toward Terminal C where their flight had been scheduled to depart. The terminal was crowded with evening travelers, business people returning home, families with tired children, college students with oversized backpacks. None of these ordinary travelers knew that somewhere in this massive building, my 8-year-old daughter was alone and terrified. At the security checkpoint, my progress halted. I need to get through, I gasped to the TSA agent. My daughter, she's alone at a gate. Airport security called me. You need a boarding pass to proceed beyond this point, the agent replied with practiced indifference. You don't understand, I pleaded, tears now streaming freely. My father abandoned my 8-year-old. Please, I just need to get to her. Something in my desperate expression must have registered, because the agent's face softened slightly. He called over a supervisor who, after verifying my identity and the situation through several phone calls, arranged for an airport police officer to escort me through security. Your daughter is safe, the officer assured me as we hurried through the terminal. She was found alone at gate 32 by a flight attendant who notified security immediately. She's currently with a child welfare officer in our terminal office. How long? I managed to ask. How long was she alone? The officer hesitated. We're still piecing that together. The flight to Chicago departed at 2:15 p.m. Your daughter was reported to security at approximately 4:30 p.m. Over 2 hours. My 8-year-old had been alone for over 2 hours in one of the busiest airports in the country. The airport security office was small, but mercifully quiet compared to the chaotic terminal. And there, sitting on a vinyl chair with puffy eyes and tear-stained cheeks, was Lily. Her pink backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. Mommy, she cried when she saw me, launching herself into my arms with such force I nearly fell backward. I held her trembling body against mine, my own tears flowing freely now. I'm here, baby. I'm here. You're safe. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I repeated, rocking her gently as if she were a much younger child. A woman in a blazer with an airport ID badge approached us, introducing herself as Tara Wilson from Child Welfare Services. Mrs. Miller, we'll need to take a formal statement about what happened today. I nodded, still clutching Lily. Of course. Whatever you need. But please, can I have a moment with my daughter first? Once we were relatively private, I gently asked Lily what had happened. Her story came out in hiccuping sobs. Grandpa had been irritated from the start, she explained. He didn't like how excited she was, telling her repeatedly to settle down and act her age. At the airport restaurant where they stopped for lunch, Lily had accidentally knocked over her soda, spilling it onto Walter's shoes. He got really mad, Mommy, Lily whispered. His face got all red like when you shake a soda can too much. During the security screening, Walter's frustration had escalated when Lily took too long removing her shoes. By the time they reached the gate, he was seething in silence. Lily had asked innocent questions about the airplane they could see through the window. How fast did it go? Was it scary to fly? Would her ears hurt like in movies? Walter had snapped at her to stop with the incessant questions. When boarding began, he'd abruptly stood up. I thought we were getting on the plane, Lily said. But Grandpa put my backpack on the chair and said, your mother coddles you too much. You need to learn how the real world works when you act like a brat. Lily had started crying, not understanding what was happening. He said, "Crying won't help you here. Sit in this spot and think about how to behave properly. Maybe missing this flight will teach you to respect adults." She'd watched in confusion as Walter boarded the plane without her. A flight attendant had noticed Lily alone, but assumed her parent was in the restroom. It wasn't until the flight departed and Lily remained alone, sobbing, that airport personnel realized something was wrong. By some miracle, Lily had remembered the laminated card in her backpack. Like a secret agent, she told me with a ghost of a smile. The card had allowed airport security to contact me immediately. The formal interview with security and child welfare was grueling. I provided all the details of the arrangement with Walter, my work emergency, the calls and messages discovered too late. They took copies of Walter's damning voicemail. Terms like child endangerment and criminal abandonment were used. I was informed that a formal investigation would follow. "Will I be in trouble?" Lily asked in a small voice after overhearing fragments of the adult conversation. "No, sweetheart," I assured her, my heart breaking all over again. "You did absolutely nothing wrong. You did everything right, especially remembering to show your identification card." By the time we were cleared to leave, it was nearly midnight. Lily was exhausted beyond words, her small body limp against mine as I carried her to the car. In the parking garage, she suddenly stiffened. "Mommy," she whispered, "what if Grandpa comes back?" "He won't come near you ever again," I promised, a cold certainty in my voice that seemed to reassure her. "I will never let anyone hurt you like that again." The drive home from Newark Airport was silent except for Lily's occasional sniffles. She'd cried herself into exhaustion, but wouldn't let herself fall asleep, jerking awake whenever her eyelids drooped. Her small hand clutched mine across the center console, releasing only when I needed both hands to turn the wheel. "We're almost home, sweetheart," I said softly as we exited the highway. "You're safe now." Our apartment, normally a haven of comfort, felt different that night, as if the outside world's dangers had somehow seeped through the walls. I made up the couch in the living room, creating a nest of blankets and pillows so Lily wouldn't have to sleep alone. "Can we leave the lights on?" she asked, her voice small. "Of course we can," I assured her, settling beside her with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Despite her exhaustion, sleep didn't come easily. Twice she jolted awake with a panicked cry, disoriented and terrified, convinced she was alone again. Each time, I held her close, stroking her hair and humming softly until her breathing steadied. Near dawn, she finally fell into a deeper sleep, allowing me to slip away to make necessary calls. My supervisor was understanding about my need for emergency family leave. Katie was horrified by what had happened, her initial relief at knowing Lily was safe quickly turning to fury at our father. "I always knew Dad was harsh," Katie said, her voice tight with anger, "but this crosses every line. How could he do this to a child? To his own granddaughter?" "I don't know," I whispered, still struggling to comprehend it myself. "I keep thinking there must be some explanation, something I'm missing. People don't just abandon children at airports." "Except he did," Katie responded bluntly. "And Rebecca, there's something else you should know. Last Thanksgiving, when you were working and I took Lily to Dad's house, I found him making her stand in the corner for spilling gravy on the tablecloth. He said she needed to stand there for an hour to learn carefulness. I intervened, and we left early. I should have told you then." My stomach clenched. "Why didn't you?" "He convinced me it wasn't a big deal, that I was overreacting. Said you knew about his disciplinary approaches, and were fine with them." Katie's voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Becca. I should have trusted my instincts. The revelation opened a floodgate of doubts. What other lessons had my father been teaching Lily when I wasn't present? Had I been blind to warning signs? The maternal guilt crashed over me in suffocating waves. When Lily finally woke around noon, the psychological effects were immediately apparent. She followed me from room to room, panic rising in her eyes if I moved out of sight even to use the bathroom. She repeatedly checked the locks on our apartment door. When the doorbell rang with a food delivery I'd ordered, she burst into tears, convinced it was Walter coming to take her away. That night brought the first nightmare, Lily waking up screaming that she was lost and no one could find her. The next day, she refused to go to school, clinging to me with such desperate intensity that I couldn't bring myself to force the issue. My calls to Walter went straight to voicemail until the third day after the incident. When he finally answered, his voice was calm, almost dismissive. "I figured you'd call eventually," he said, as if we were discussing something as mundane as a missed lunch date. "How could you?" I demanded, stepping into the hallway so Lily wouldn't hear. "How could you leave an 8-year-old child alone in an airport?" "She was being difficult," he replied matter-of-factly. Whining, asking endless questions, making a scene. "You've raised her to think the world revolves around her comfort." I did what any responsible adult would do. I showed her actions have consequences. Responsible. I nearly choked on the word. You abandoned a child in your care. There's an active investigation for child endangerment. This isn't about parenting philosophies, Dad. This is about criminal neglect. Walter's voice hardened. Don't be so dramatic, Rebecca. The airport is full of security and personnel. She was never in any real danger. She's 8 years old. She was terrified. She's having nightmares and panic attacks. Kids are resilient, he dismissed. You're overreacting as usual. She'll forget about it in a week. But Lily didn't forget. As days passed, her symptoms worsened. She developed full-blown separation anxiety, becoming hysterical when I needed to leave for even short periods. She began wetting the bed again, something she hadn't done since she was 4. Her school called repeatedly about her refusal to participate in class activities and her tearful episodes during the day. I made the difficult decision to take extended leave from work, using a combination of sick days, vacation time, and unpaid family leave. Our finances would suffer, but Lily's recovery had to come first. Walter, meanwhile, escalated his campaign of justification. He called multiple times, each conversation more defensive than the last. When I told him plainly that he would never be allowed unsupervised access to Lily again, his response chilled me. Family loyalty goes both ways, Rebecca, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. I've helped you financially since Lily was born. Your apartment's security deposit. Lily's preschool tuition when you were struggling after the divorce. The loans for your car repairs last year. Perhaps it's time I called in those debts. The threat was clear, and it struck at my greatest vulnerability. My ability to provide stability for Lily as a single mother. Walter had indeed helped us financially over the years, stepping in during critical moments when my nursing salary couldn't quite stretch far enough. I'd viewed it as the support any parent might offer their child, never imagining it would become leverage against me. If you think you can buy access to traumatize my daughter further, you're mistaken, I told him, with more confidence than I felt. We'll manage without you. As I hung up, I wondered if we truly could. 1 month after the airport incident, our lives had narrowed to a series of careful routines designed to minimize Lily's anxiety. School drop-offs had become elaborate rituals of reassurance. I would walk her to her classroom, where her teacher Ms. Jensen had kindly allowed me to stay for the first 15 minutes of the day. We had a special goodbye sequence, 3 hugs, 2 high fives, and 1 pinky promise that I would return at exactly 3:15 p.m. Despite these precautions, the school counselor reported that Lily spent much of her day watching the clock, becoming increasingly agitated as dismissal time approached. The nights were worse. Lily refused to sleep in her own room, insisting on dragging her mattress into my bedroom. Even then, she would wake multiple times, reaching out in panic to make sure I was still there. Dark circles formed under her eyes, mirroring my own exhaustion. Most concerning were the regression behaviors that emerged, speaking in a babyish voice, wanting help with tasks she'd mastered years ago, occasionally sucking her thumb when particularly stressed. It was as if she were trying to return to an earlier, safer stage of childhood. What's happening to her? I asked Dr. Sarah Matthews, the child psychologist recommended by Lily's school counselor, during our 3rd session. We were speaking privately while Lily worked with an art therapist in the adjoining room. Dr. Matthews adjusted her glasses, her expression serious but kind. What Lily experienced was a profound attachment injury. At her developmental stage, a primary caregiver's abandonment doesn't register just as a frightening event, it undermines her basic sense of security in the world. But I didn't abandon her, I protested, tears threatening. Her grandfather did. To Lily's developing brain, the distinction isn't so clear, Dr. Matthews explained gently. She was left alone by someone she trusted, someone you trusted her with. That creates a ripple effect of uncertainty. If one adult can leave, perhaps others can too. Perhaps everyone can. The diagnosis came after 6 sessions. Acute separation anxiety disorder with post-traumatic stress features. Dr. Matthews recommended twice-weekly therapy for Lily and suggested I consider counseling for myself as well. You're carrying a tremendous burden, she observed. Your own childhood experiences with your father, your current anger and guilt, the practical challenges of supporting Lily through this. It's a lot for one person to manage alone. I nodded, fighting back tears. I'll think about it, I promised, knowing our health insurance would barely cover Lily's necessary treatment, let alone additional therapy for me. The financial strain was becoming unsustainable. My unpaid leave had stretched to 4 weeks, with savings dwindling rapidly. The hospital had been understanding, but needed a firm return date. Yet Lily fell apart at the mere mention of my returning to work, even with the carefully selected babysitters I'd interviewed. You can't leave me, she sobbed during one particularly difficult conversation. What if you don't come back? What if you forget me like Grandpa did? I would never forget you, ever, I assured her, holding her trembling body close. Mommy has to work, so we can have our home and food and your special therapy sessions with Dr. Matthews. Then take me with you, she begged. I'll be good. I'll be quiet. Please don't leave me with somebody else. My colleagues noticed my deterioration when I attempted a half-day shift the following week. I'd arranged for Lily to stay with Jenny, a retired pediatric nurse who lived in our building and had formed a gentle rapport with Lily over several preliminary visits. You look exhausted, Rebecca, my supervisor commented when I nearly administered the wrong dosage of medication, catching myself at the last moment. I'm fine, I insisted automatically. Just adjusting to the schedule again. 3 hours into my shift, Jenny called. Lily was inconsolable, had thrown up from crying so hard, and was now hiding in the closet refusing to come out. I left immediately, ignoring the concerned looks from my colleagues. Walter's harassment continued throughout this period, taking various forms. Sometimes he called with false contrition, claiming he wanted to make amends. Other times, he showed up unannounced at our apartment, forcing me to speak to him through the chained door while Lily hid in the bathroom, shaking. This has gone on long enough, Rebecca, he declared during one such visit. You're being irrational. Lily needs a male influence, and I'm the only grandfather she has. She needs safety and stability, I countered. Something you deliberately took from her. His eyes narrowed. I've consulted an attorney about grandparent rights. The courts recognize the importance of extended family relationships. Go ahead and try, I challenged, fear and rage combining into a dangerous courage. Explain to a judge why you abandoned an 8-year-old at an airport. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic to your visitation request. The breaking point came 6 weeks after the incident. I'd finally arranged suitable childcare that Lily cautiously accepted, a tag-team approach between Jenny and my friend Melissa, with frequent check-in calls from me throughout my shortened nursing shifts. We were barely staying afloat financially, but managing day by day. Then the school called. Walter had shown up during lunch period, telling the front office he was there to take Lily to a dental appointment. We checked the approved pickup list, and he wasn't on it, the school secretary explained over the phone. When we refused access, he became belligerent, claiming grandparent rights. Security had to escort him from the building. Lily hadn't seen him, thank goodness, but the school was understandably concerned. I rushed there immediately, finding my daughter in the counselor's office, unaware of what had happened, but sensing the adult's tension. That evening, I filed for a temporary restraining order, providing the airport incident documentation, Walter's threatening messages, and the school security report as evidence. The court granted the emergency order, which would later be reviewed for potential extension at a formal hearing. Sitting on my couch that night after finally getting Lily to sleep, I faced the brutal reality of our situation. We couldn't continue like this. My job was at risk. Our savings were nearly gone. Lily's recovery was progressing glacially despite expensive therapy sessions. Walter's escalating behavior threatened what little stability we'd managed to maintain. For the first time since the airport incident, I allowed myself to break down completely, sobbing into a pillow to muffle the sound from Lily's sensitive ears. I had tried so hard to be strong, to be the unshakable foundation Lily needed. But I was crumbling under the weight of it all. I can't do this alone, I whispered into the darkness. I don't know how to fix this. The admission felt both devastating and strangely liberating, acknowledging my limitations after weeks of pretending I could handle everything. Something had to change, but what? Where could I possibly turn for help when all my resources were already stretched beyond breaking point? The answer came from an unexpected direction the very next morning. 6 months after the airport incident, I stared at the final notice from our apartment management. The grace period on our rent was ending, and despite my partial return to work, I'd fallen hopelessly behind on payments. The careful balance I'd constructed had collapsed completely, Lily's therapy costs, my reduced work hours, and the legal fees from obtaining the restraining order against Walter had drained every financial resource we had. That morning, I'd received a formal warning about job performance. Though my supervisor was sympathetic, hospital protocols couldn't be compromised. "You're one of our best nurses, Rebecca," she'd said kindly but firmly. "But I'm concerned about your ability to focus right now. These medication near misses can't continue." I sat at our small kitchen table, surrounded by past due notices, wondering which necessity to sacrifice next. Therapy for Lily. Electricity. Food. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for the following week, requiring another day off work, and more legal fees we couldn't afford. A text message illuminated my phone screen, James, Lily's father, responding to my desperate message from the previous night. "At your place in 30. We need to talk." James had been largely absent in Lily's life since the divorce, his visits sporadic and brief. He paid the minimum child support required, often late, and sometimes went months without seeing Lily. His artistic pursuits, he was a freelance graphic designer and aspiring painter, always seemed to take precedence over parenting responsibilities. When he knocked on our door exactly 30 minutes later, I barely recognized him. Gone was the disheveled artist with paint-stained jeans. In his place stood a clean-cut man in a button-down shirt, his usually wild hair neatly trimmed. "Rebecca," he said simply, his eyes widening at my appearance. I hadn't looked in a mirror that morning, but I could imagine what he saw. A hollowed-out version of his ex-wife, exhaustion etched into every feature. "James," I replied, stepping aside to let him enter. Lily was at school, one of the few normal routines we'd managed to maintain, though her attendance was spotty at best. "I got your message," he said, sitting awkwardly on the edge of our couch. "About Walter and what happened at the airport. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The question held no accusation, only genuine confusion. I sank into the armchair across from him, suddenly too tired to stand. "You haven't exactly been present, James. The last time you were supposed to take Lily for the weekend, you cancelled last minute, because of some gallery opening." He winced. "That's fair. But this is different. This is serious." "Yes," I agreed, "it is. And I've been handling it. Or trying to. Not alone anymore," he said with unexpected firmness. "I want to help. Really help, not just throw money at the problem and disappear." I studied his face, searching for the flakiness I'd come to expect. Instead, I found something new, determination, maybe even maturity. "What changed?" I asked bluntly. James looked down at his hands. "Me? I changed. Or I'm trying to." He explained that 6 months ago, he'd finally sought treatment for the undiagnosed ADHD that had contributed to his unreliability and impulsivity throughout our marriage. He'd secured a steady design position with a marketing firm, moved into a stable apartment, and been working with a therapist on his issues with commitment and responsibility. "I'm not asking for us to get back together," he clarified quickly. "But Lily is my daughter too. I want to be the father she deserves." Under normal circumstances, I might have been skeptical, demanded proof of these changes beyond his word. But rock bottom offers no luxury of pride or caution. "I need help," I admitted, the words physically painful. "Lily needs help. If you're serious about this, really serious, we can figure something out." The conversation that followed was the most honest we'd had in years. I detailed the full extent of the airport incident, Lily's ongoing trauma, Walter's escalating harassment, and our financial freefall. James listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "I had no idea it was this bad," he said when I finished. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this alone." For the first time in months, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope. Not for reconciliation with James, that ship had sailed long ago, but for partnership in the enormous task of helping Lily heal. "I want to take more parenting time," James offered. "Regular schedule, not just occasional visits. I've set up a proper bedroom for her in my new place. And I can help with therapy costs." "She's not the same little girl you remember," I warned. "She has severe anxiety, especially about being left. She needs consistent routines, patience, understanding." "I'll work with her therapist," he promised. "Learn whatever I need to learn. I'm not expecting it to be easy, but I'm committed." The next breakthrough came later that week, during Lily's session with Dr. Matthews. I had finally agreed to join the therapy process myself, recognizing that my own childhood trauma was affecting how I navigated this crisis. "Rebecca," Dr. Matthews said gently during our private portion of the session, "I notice you've been taking full responsibility for what happened to Lily, as if you somehow should have prevented your father's actions." "I trusted him with her," I whispered. despite knowing what he was like when I was growing up. I put my job before her safety. You trusted your parent to behave like a responsible adult, she corrected. That's not a failure on your part, it's a normal human expectation. The failure was entirely his. We discussed the patterns from my own childhood, how Walter's tough love approach had normalized emotional abandonment for me, making it harder to recognize the danger signs in his interaction with Lily. There's a concept called intergenerational trauma, Dr. Matthews explained. The harmful patterns we experience in childhood often unconsciously repeat in our own parenting, even when we're actively trying to be different. But I've never abandoned Lily, I protested. I've never been cruel like my father. No, but you've abandoned yourself, she pointed out. You've pushed beyond your limits, denied your own needs, refused help. You're modeling self-sacrifice to the point of self-harm, which is its own kind of unhealthy lesson. Her words struck me with the force of revelation. I had been so focused on being everything my father was not, warm where he was cold, nurturing where he was harsh, that I'd missed how I'd internalized his core belief, that needing help was weakness. That session marked a turning point in my own healing journey. I began weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Ellen Parker, a specialist in adult trauma, while continuing to participate in Lily's treatment. Simultaneously, James started attending parenting classes specifically designed for fathers of children with anxiety disorders. The court hearing for the permanent restraining order against Walter arrived amid these changes. The judge, reviewing the evidence including the airport security reports and Walter's threatening messages, granted a 1-year order with the possibility of extension. Walter's counterclaim for grandparent visitation rights was dismissed outright. As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the constant fear of Walter appearing at Lily's school or our apartment. James proved surprisingly steadfast in his new commitment. He began with short visits to our apartment, gradually building Lily's trust through consistent presence and endless patience with her anxiety symptoms. When she felt comfortable enough for an overnight stay at his place, he followed her safety protocols to the letter, checking under the bed for monsters, keeping the nightlight on, answering her midnight panic with calm reassurance. He read me 3 stories and didn't even get mad when I needed to call you, Lily reported after her second overnight visit, a note of wonder in her voice. With James sharing more parenting responsibilities, I was able to increase my work hours and stabilize our finances. The breathing room allowed me to focus more effectively on both Lily's recovery and my own healing process. One evening, about 8 months after the airport incident, I received an unexpected message from my sister Katie. Dad's been calling me non-stop. Says he's had a change of heart and wants to apologize. What do you want me to tell him? My immediate instinct was to reject any contact, to protect the fragile peace we'd established. But Dr. Parker had been helping me work through my complicated feelings about Walter, the anger and betrayal, but also the lingering childlike desire for his approval and love. You don't owe him forgiveness, Dr. Parker had reminded me during our last session. But deciding how to engage, or whether to engage at all, from a place of strength rather than fear is part of reclaiming your power. After careful consideration, I replied to Katie, tell him I'm not ready to talk, and any communication needs to go through my lawyer for now. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't a complete door slam either. It was a boundary, something I was finally learning to establish after a lifetime of having mine violated. That night, as I watched Lily sleeping peacefully for the 3rd night in a row without nightmares, I allowed myself to acknowledge how far we'd come from those darkest days. We weren't fully healed, perhaps we never would be entirely, but we were healing. Step by step, day by day, we were reclaiming our lives from the trauma that had nearly destroyed us. And we weren't doing it alone anymore. 1 year after the airport incident, Lily and I stood in front of a small cake decorated with a single candle. It wasn't a birthday we were celebrating, but a different kind of milestone. "What should we call today?" Lily had asked that morning, her expression thoughtful as she helped me prepare breakfast. I considered her question carefully. "It could be a bravery anniversary," I suggested. "To celebrate how brave you've been this whole year." She nodded, satisfied with the designation. At 9 years old, Lily still carried the effects of her trauma, but they no longer defined her daily life. The severe separation anxiety had gradually eased into more manageable nervousness. The nightmares came only occasionally, usually triggered by specific stressors. Most importantly, she had reclaimed parts of her childhood, playing with friends, enjoying school, laughing without the shadow of fear constantly lurking behind her eyes. My own therapy with Dr. Parker had proven transformative. Through our weekly sessions, I'd begun unpacking a lifetime of normalized dysfunction from my upbringing. I learned to recognize how Walter's harsh parenting had shaped my own insecurities and perfectionism, my difficulty setting boundaries, and my tendency to shoulder impossible burdens alone rather than risk disapproval by asking for help. The airport incident was a traumatic breaking point, Dr. Parker observed during one session, but in some ways, it forced a necessary reckoning with patterns that were already causing harm in more subtle ways. She was right. As painful as that crisis had been, it had shattered illusions I might have maintained for years otherwise, about Walter's capacity for change, about my own martyrdom parenting style, about the unsustainability of trying to be everything to Lily without adequate support. Dr. Sarah Matthews continued working with Lily, transitioning from crisis intervention to more focused play therapy techniques. Through carefully structured activities, Lily processed her feelings of abandonment and gradually rebuilt her sense of security. Children are remarkably resilient when given the right support, Dr. Matthews assured me during one of our parent consultation sessions. Lily's progress is a testament to that resilience, but also to the stable environment you've worked to create around her. That stable environment now included James, whose transformation from unreliable ex-husband to committed co-parent continued to surprise me. He maintained his regular visitation schedule without fail, coordinated with Lily's therapy appointments, and communicated openly about challenges and successes. "I never thought we'd be here," I admitted to him one evening as we sat on my apartment balcony, watching Lily play with the new puppy he'd helped her adopt from the shelter, a gentle therapy dog recommended by Dr. Matthews to help with her remaining anxiety. "Me neither," James acknowledged. "But nearly losing her, really understanding what was at stake when I saw how deeply she was suffering, it changed something fundamental for me. Our co-parenting relationship had evolved into an unexpected friendship based on mutual respect and shared purpose. While romance remained firmly in our past, we had found a new kind of partnership focused entirely on Lily's well-being. My professional life had stabilized as well. I'd returned to full-time nursing, but negotiated a schedule that accommodated Lily's needs and my own therapy appointments. My supervisor, impressed by my dedication to both personal recovery and professional responsibilities, had recommended me for a leadership position in the department's newly formed wellness committee. The financial independence I'd established felt particularly significant. In those early desperate days after cutting ties with Walter, I had gathered every loan document, every check he'd written, every financial gift he'd given us over the years. Working extra shifts when James had Lily, I systematically repaid every dollar, severing the financial control Walter had wielded for so long. When the final payment cleared, I mailed Walter a brief note with the receipt, all debts repaid in full. The symbolic act of reclaiming that independence had been worth every sacrifice it required. Walter himself remained a complicated shadow in our lives. The restraining order prevented direct contact, but he occasionally sent messages through Katie or other family members. Sometimes apologetic, Sometimes justifying, sometimes threatening, his communications reflected a man struggling to reconcile his actions with his self-image as a stern, but ultimately loving father and grandfather. He's been asking about coming to family Thanksgiving, Katie reported during one of our weekly phone calls. Says he's been seeing a counselor through his church and working on his anger issues. What do you think? I asked her, no longer feeling the immediate panic such suggestions once triggered. Honestly, I think he's trying, in his way. But I also think his version of trying involves everyone else adapting to accommodate him, not true accountability. She paused. And I'd never expect you to have him anywhere near Lily again. I appreciate that, I said sincerely. Maybe someday I'll be ready for a conversation with him, with proper boundaries and mediators. But not yet, and certainly not a holiday gathering with Lily present. My sister's unwavering support had been another unexpected gift of this difficult journey. Though she lived in Chicago, she'd flown to New Jersey multiple times during the crisis period, helped financially when things were most desperate, and provided a constant listening ear without judgment. The final confrontation with Walter came unexpectedly, about 18 months after the airport incident. His persistent attempts to re-establish contact had been escalating, culminating in him waiting outside my apartment building one evening as I returned from work. Rebecca, he called, staying the legal distance required by the restraining order. Please, just 5 minutes. My heart pounded, but not with the paralyzing fear of months past. I felt steady, centered in the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. I can't talk to you, Dad, I replied calmly. The restraining order is still in effect. That's just a piece of paper, he dismissed, though he remained where he was. I'm your father. We're family. Family doesn't abandon children at airports, I stated simply. Family doesn't threaten and manipulate when they don't get their way. His face flushed with the familiar anger I remembered from childhood. I made one mistake. After everything I've done for you and Lily over the years. The money, the time, It wasn't one mistake, I interrupted, my voice steady despite my racing heart. It was the culmination of a lifetime of conditional love and harsh lessons. And any support you provided was turned into a weapon the moment we disagreed with you. Walter seemed genuinely shocked by my directness. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, I wasn't backing down, apologizing, or seeking his approval. I've changed, he insisted, his voice losing some of its certainty. The counseling is helping. I just want another chance. I'm glad you're getting help, I said sincerely. That's a positive step. But trust, once broken, has to be earned back slowly, if it can be at all. Right now, my priority is protecting Lily and continuing our healing process. She's my granddaughter, Walter said, a note of genuine grief entering his voice. Yes, she is, I acknowledged. And maybe someday, if you continue your counseling and demonstrate real change over time, we can discuss supervised visits. But that's a decision for the future, not today. I entered the building then, legs shaking but mind clear. Dr. Parker later described that encounter as a pivotal moment in my recovery, standing my ground with calm confidence rather than either fearful submission or reactive anger. 2 years after the airport incident, life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined during those darkest days. Lily, now 10, had joined the school science club and made several close friends. She still had occasional anxiety flares, particularly around travel and separation, but had developed healthy coping mechanisms with Dr. Matthews' guidance. The most remarkable milestone came when Lily herself raised the possibility of flying to Chicago to visit Katie for spring break. I think I'm ready to try an airplane again, she announced over dinner one evening, her voice determined despite the slight tremor in her hands. But only if you come with me, Mom. And maybe Dad too. James and I exchanged surprised glances across the table. Are you sure, sweetheart? I asked carefully. There's no rush. We could drive instead. I don't want to be afraid forever, she said with a wisdom beyond her years. Dr. Matthews says facing fears with support is how we get stronger. That Easter break, the three of us boarded a flight to Chicago, Lily seated between James and me, clutching both our hands during takeoff. Though she was tense and quiet throughout much of the flight, the triumphant smile she gave as we landed safely told its own story of courage and healing. Our family structure wasn't traditional: divorced parents who were friends, a network of chosen family including therapists and support group members, careful boundaries with biological relatives, but it provided the love and security Lily needed to thrive. As for Walter, we maintained the distance established by the restraining order, which I chose not to renew after its expiration, but replaced with clear, firm boundaries communicated through legal channels. He continued his counseling, according to Katie, though whether genuine transformation was possible after decades of entrenched behavior patterns remained to be seen. What had become clear through this journey was that breaking cycles of generational trauma required more than just vowing to do things differently than my parents had. It demanded conscious work, professional support, and constant vigilance against slipping into familiar patterns under stress. The greatest irony wasn't lost on me. Walter had always claimed his harsh methods would teach strength and resilience, yet the real strength had come through vulnerability, acknowledging wounds, seeking help, building community, establishing healthy boundaries. Everything he had dismissed as weakness had ultimately been our salvation. Today marks 2 years since my father abandoned my 8-year-old daughter at Newark Liberty International Airport. It feels strange to write that sentence now, to acknowledge the reality of what happened without being overwhelmed by the emotions that once accompanied it. Not because the pain has disappeared entirely, some wounds leave permanent scars, but because we've learned to carry it differently. Lily turns 11 next month. Last week, I watched her dash excitedly toward the school bus, turning back only briefly to wave goodbye. No lingering hugs, no tearful clinging, no elaborate reassurance rituals. Just a normal preteen, eager to meet her friends and slightly embarrassed by her mother's watchful presence. These ordinary moments still take my breath away sometimes. They are quiet victories in a battle that once seemed unwinnable. Our new home, a small but sun-filled townhouse we moved into 6 months ago, has become the safe haven Lily needed. Her room is painted lavender, decorated with science posters and the ribbon she won at the regional science fair for her project on honeybee communication. The trauma-informed therapy dog, a gentle golden retriever mix named Buddy, sleeps at the foot of her bed each night, his presence a constant reassurance that she's never truly alone. My own growth through these 2 years has been equally profound. Through continued work with Dr. Parker, I've learned to recognize and interrupt the unhealthy patterns established in my childhood. I've discovered that setting boundaries isn't selfish, but necessary, that asking for help isn't weakness, but wisdom, that perfectionism was never protection, but a prison of my father's design. The support group I joined for parents of traumatized children evolved in an unexpected direction. What began as a place to share coping strategies became a close-knit community that expanded beyond our shared challenges. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, creating a chosen family bound by mutual understanding and genuine care rather than obligation or blood ties. 6 months ago, inspired by the healing I'd witnessed in that group, I worked with the hospital to establish a similar support network for healthcare workers dealing with secondary trauma from their work in emergency settings. Leading those sessions weekly has become one of the most meaningful aspects of my career, a way to transform my own painful experiences into something that helps others. My relationship with James continues to surprise everyone who knew us during our tumultuous marriage and bitter divorce. Co-parenting counseling helped us establish clear communication patterns and mutual respect that had been absent during our romantic relationship. Lily spends alternate weeks with each of us now, a schedule that provides stability while allowing both of us meaningful parenting time. You guys should get back together, Lily suggested once, about a year ago, with the straightforward optimism of childhood. We're better as friends and co-parents, sweetheart, I explained gently. Sometimes people can love each other and still not be right for each other romantically. Like how chocolate ice cream is great and pickles are great, but not together, she asked, demonstrating the concrete thinking typical of her age. Exactly like that, I laughed, grateful for her ability to process complex emotional concepts through humor. The most challenging aspect of our recovery journey has been navigating the complicated reality of Walter's place in our lives. The restraining order expired after a year, and after careful consideration and consultation with both our therapists, I chose not to pursue renewal. Instead, I established clear, non-negotiable boundaries through written communication. Any contact with Lily would require evidence of consistent therapy for at least a year, a formal acknowledgement of the harm caused, and would begin with professionally supervised visits only if and when Lily herself expressed readiness. Walter's response came through my sister Katie, who had maintained limited contact with him throughout this period. According to her, he oscillated between grudging acceptance of these terms and bursts of the old entitlement and anger. His trying, Katie reported during one of her visits from Chicago. The church counseling seems to be helping somewhat. But it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. He'll admit he made a mistake, but still can't fully acknowledge the severity, or take full responsibility. That's about what I expected, I told her, without the bitterness that would have colored such a conversation months earlier. True change at his age, after a lifetime of those behaviors, would be remarkable. The final test of our new boundaries came unexpectedly last month, when Katie called to tell me Walter had suffered a minor heart attack. He was stable, but asking to see Lily during his recovery. "What do you want to do?" James asked when I shared the news, respecting that this decision ultimately rested with me as the primary protective parent. After careful thought and consultation with Dr. Matthews about potential impacts on Lily, I arranged a video call, a safe distance that respected Lily's still healing sense of security while acknowledging the family connection. The call lasted only 10 minutes. Walter, looking noticeably older in his hospital bed, managed to avoid any overtly manipulative statements, but still couldn't offer the direct apology Lily deserved. Instead, he spoke vaguely about wishing things had been different, and hoping to be part of her life again someday. Lily, sitting between James and me on the couch, responded with impressive composure. "I'm glad you're feeling better, Grandpa," she said politely. "I have to go to my science club now." Afterward, she seemed thoughtful, but not distressed. "He looks old," she observed. "Does his heart attack mean he's going to die soon?" "Not necessarily," I explained. "With proper medical care, he could live many more years." She nodded, processing this information. "I don't hate him anymore," she said finally. "But I don't really miss him either." "That's okay," I assured her. "Your feelings are valid, whatever they are." This is perhaps the most important lesson our journey has taught me. Healing doesn't follow a prescribed path or timeline. It doesn't necessarily lead to neat narrative closure or Hollywood-style reconciliations. Real healing is messy, non-linear, and deeply personal. Walter may never fully understand or acknowledge the harm he caused. He may never become the grandfather Lily deserves. And while that reality holds its own kind of grief, I've learned that we don't need his understanding or validation to move forward with our lives. Breaking generational patterns of trauma isn't about forcing transformation in those who hurt us. It's about making different choices ourselves, establishing healthier patterns for the next generation, and finding the courage to say, "This cycle stops with me." 2 years ago, in the depths of our crisis, I couldn't have imagined the peace we've found. Not because everything is perfect, it isn't, but because we've discovered our capacity to weather imperfection, to find joy despite lingering pain, to build security even in an inherently uncertain world. If you're watching this and struggling with family trauma of your own, please know that healing is possible, even when it seems impossibly distant. Reach out for professional help. Set boundaries that protect your well-being, even when they are difficult. Build a support network of people who understand and respect your journey. The most powerful lesson I've learned is that resilience doesn't come from enduring hardship alone, as my father always claimed. True strength is found in connection, in vulnerability, in the courage to ask for help when you need it most. Our story continues to unfold, day by day, step by step. And while I can't know what challenges lie ahead, I face them with a hard-won confidence that whatever comes, we have the tools and support to meet it together. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members for your own well-being or your children's safety? What helped you through that process? Please share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is know we're not alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I wish you strength and peace on your own path to healing.